Hello everyone, welcome back to Silver Hill. This channel we discuss different topics related to aging and retirement and being in your 60s. Now I am in my early 60s, and in this video today I'd like to talk to you about some of the surprises that I found along the way as I transitioned from my late 50s into my 60s. So you may want to stay tuned, and if you're younger, you may find this helpful to maybe avoid some of the problems that I already have. If you're older, you may also identify with some of these issues and have some of your own solutions to lay down in the comments. Okay, so I'm here videotaping, that dates me, doesn't it? And in the beautiful Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia, and it's blossom time at this moment, and I have a little bit of white in my cap, so it's attracting the bees. So if I suddenly disappear from the video, you'll know why. So anyway, in today's video, I'd like to talk about some of the things that surprised me along the way and why I think early retirement, as early as you can get it, that you should go for it. What I found was, as I was growing up, I noticed some things in my uncles. They were in their 40s, and my dad and in his 50s, and I kind of took those things for granted. And what I saw was eventual things that they had to deal with painted a certain picture in my mind of what my life was going to be like when I got 50 or 60. Now that kind of made me a bit maybe too comfortable, I think, because I started to see the world a certain way, and I started to expect that that's the way it was going to be for me as I approached my 50s and 60s. But it wasn't going to be quite that way, and I was in for quite a surprise, as I will tell you in this video, as it still seems to surprise me. And I do know that oftentimes people will say, well, it's this could have happened or that could have happened, things could have been worse. And I do know that, but we all live relatively to our own lives. Okay, so as I was growing up, I saw in the family that I grew up in, I had a sort of a strong extended family. We lived in an area where it was close to where my mom's relatives were, and even my dad. We all lived in the same province, but his relatives we didn't see as much because we lived closer to my mom. So what I saw was growing up is that my uncles, I had two uncles I lived close to, and of course my dad, they were all about the same age. And what I saw in them is like longevity and fairly good. I mean, all three of them have passed away now. All three of them lived into their 80s. One was my dad, he lived to be 87. My other uncle, one uncle lived to be early 80s, and the other one almost 100. He was in his 90s before he passed away. So what I saw growing up, of course, being in a close community, was that things that came along that were physical, like certain operations and that sort of thing, they didn't really happen very often. And I recall my two uncles one time in one of the living rooms that we'd go and meet. Like, we'd travel around on Sundays, and we'd go to different family, and at Christmas time, and so we were all this close-knit kind of place, community, family community. And so what I'd see, we got a little bit of wind here. It's been windy here for a couple of months, and so we'll just continue and ignore the wind, I guess. But that's why the camera's shaking, if that's what you're wondering. It's just the old wind. But we are having some nice weather right now, and that's a good thing. So what I saw was, and I do remember my two uncles having a gallbladder surgery, and they were probably in their 40s, and they both had to have it about the same time. And back then they didn't even do laparoscopic gallbladder surgery. They just kind of, they had to open you up and take it out, whatever, your gallbladder. And I remember it causing a lot of pain. My aunt was explaining a lot of the pain and stuff that one of my uncles went through, and he'd have to go to the local doctor just to get a shot of a painkiller just to help him get through, because they didn't have the medical service access that we do now. We do complain about it, but it was different back in the 60s and the 70s. So eventually they both had their gallbladder out, and I remember them having this photo, and maybe it was a thing back then in the 70s, and they were standing in front of the TV, and the family was there, and it was no smartphones or anything like that, so someone had either an a Kodak Insta camera or something, a 35 millimeter they had to get developed, and they both were basically, they just had their shirts lifted like this and showing their scar from the gallbladder. And pretty much that was it. And I saw them go into their 50s, their 60s, their 70s. They traveled, they ate whatever they wanted. Life seemed to me to look pretty good. Now my dad, on the other hand, he had heart issues. And he had his earliest heart attack around his 50s. Now my mom, she's still going, she's in her 80s, and she's never had a heart attack, and there's no history so much that in her side of the family. But having my dad, that means it's something, of course, me and my doctor have to always watch for, because that too as well could happen, is that maybe I inherited the gene that my dad had for heart issues. But my dad, he survived over from his early 50s right into his 70s. He eventually did have to get a defibrillator pacemaker put in, so that would keep him, if he couldn't get close to someplace and his heart stopped or whatever. And so that worked a couple times. Anyway, he had about 3 heart attacks over that space of time, until the last one, the third one, they eventually gave him this defibrillator pacemaker in his chest. I remember it looked like back then it looked like a cigarette package under your t-shirt. That's how big they were. But that got him to 87 at least, and then finally I think stroke damage, and that's what happened. Anyway, so what I want to tell you about is that my expectations for entering my 50s and 60s, and thinking about how my dad and my uncles lived as men, and how they seemed to be able to keep, to travel, to work, to do things as long as they could. Well, it came kind of a surprise to me in my late 50s when I started having physical health issues. Now, just to backtrack a bit, I remember maybe things changed. Maybe I was just in a lucky family community where people aged better, healthier. Maybe they had better food. They probably did have better food. I mean, we grew up on processed food, whereas my dad and that generation, they had milk, they had cows, they had milk, they had gardens, and they had, everybody was afraid of chemicals, being sprayed on fruit or whatever, and, DDT and all that sort of thing, which is legitimate. But now we have this issue of chemicals being added to our food. Now I know everything is a chemical. Scientists will tell us that basically every breaks. What I mean is chemicals we don't need, colors and artificial flavorings and all that kind of thing. That wasn't in their diet. So, okay, so what happens is I'm approaching my 50s and getting in my 60s, and I'm thinking, well, you know what? I'm just going to be like everybody else. I'm going to get to 65. I want to work to 70 if I want. Spend the next 10 years doing what I want after that. That's not how it went for me. I was kind of put into forced retirement over health issues early, and I wasn't really ready for that. I mean, we're surviving, we're doing okay, and so I'm being attacked by a dandelion cotton thing, whatever you want to call them, seedling. So that was okay. And I thought that that's the same experience that I would have. I think I lost my train of thought there, sorry. But, I didn't expect to have health issues in my 50s. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm going to project like everyone else. And yet what was funny is I remember growing up and working, and we saw guys, and me and my friends that worked together, we saw other guys that worked, and they worked right to 65, and it was school bus drivers or school janitors or whatever, and then they would work right to 65, which is, those jobs can be hard, especially being, sometimes a bus driver was a janitor too. And that's, you're cleaning up after kids, and you get all that. You got a school full of 300 kids even, that's 600 feet, and you mop up a floor and 600 feet go over it in a rainstorm, and you got to go clean it up again, 5 times a day. And then when they're gone at night, you got to do it all over again and thoroughly clean the place and before you get to leave. So it's a lot of work like that. And what we saw growing up, me and my buddies, is that, you know, painters and laborers and whatever, you name it, these different people, welders, a lot of them, they got 65, they retired, and they died. Yeah, they just poof. But I grew up in this kind of a false world, as I was explaining to you. I think it's false and not as normal. I don't mean false, maybe not as normal as I thought it was, is that I had time, all kinds of time. So some things started to happen. Of course, we had, you know, the pandemic. Hopefully I can mention that on YouTube. And everybody was, you know, pulled off. You know, you're at home and you're trying not to spread it and all that stuff. Okay, we're not going to get into that now. But anyway, what happens is in 21, my dad died. And I'm just about to start, you know, as I've said in other videos, I'm just about to take care of his estate, you know, I mean, not that it was a huge thing, but clean up his house and get it ready for sale. It took me 4 years to do that. You can search the videos on that if you want, and I'll explain why, because everything hit at once. And what happened was, in my 50s, I was basically forced into retirement. And it's tough when you're trying to make money just bit by bit, and you're just trying to, you know, jobs don't last 30 years anymore like they did for my uncles or whatever. But what we noticed was a lot of people just seemed to just keel over in their, you know, and they just retired and they maybe got a year or less and they died. And you're like, what the hell? What happened here? What's going on? But with my mom and my dad and my uncles, I saw them, their longevity, their strength, they're able to, you know, work on things, build sheds, go fishing, whatever they wanted, travel. But what I found in my 50s, that all of a sudden in 2021, here I am, and I'm about to clean up my dad's house, and I have this, I have a kidney stone. Now, I had a kidney stone when I was younger, and it passed on its own, and it was painful and all that. But this one was 9mm. I won't get into the details. But what happened was, all of a sudden, there I am having laparoscopic kidney removal in about Christmas of 2021. I think it was a few days before Christmas. Yeah, that was an unpleasant thing, man. You got to, they leave the little hose in and everything, and you got to pull it out yourself a few days after, and it's like, what? I got to pull this thing out? Well, that's not the end of the story, and I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail because I know it bores people. But so I get over that. Now, I've had dietary health issues since I was quite young, in my 30s. A lot of digestive issues, that kind of thing. And, you know, I went to the doctors, like, what's going on here? Why can't I just eat a hamburger? Why can't I, you know, like everybody else? So what happens is I discover over a long period of time that I'm having gallbladder issues, but all the tests come back negative. I remember way back, this was decades ago, one of the results, the doctor said, all we can see, I had a HIDA scan, they called it. I mean, I had high scan, I had the esophagus thing, I had x-rays, we had x-rays with dye in them. I think that's what the HIDA scan was. And it would show how the gallbladder worked. And all that came back was, hey, dude, you have a sluggish, quote, sluggish gallbladder. That was the result. And then, okay, it's sluggish. And, okay, we're not going to get into all those details, but so that pops up. Eventually, I think that was 26? That was about 23. Yeah, the summer of 2023, after several visits to the hospital, being up all night in pain, being on morphine. They're doing the ultrasounds, which they had done decades before. Ultrasound was another thing, x-rays, a CT scan, all that. And what they found was nothing. So I keep going back, and I finally convinced my doctor that I get to see a surgeon. And she says, okay, you want to see a surgeon? I'm like, yes. So I tell him, and he says, well, I don't think it's gallbladder. They opened me up. Okay, all said and done, I had a necrotic gallbladder. It was gone. It was so bad. The doctor said it was like this. He put his hands up. He said, what was left of your gallbladder was just basically adhered to your other organs. I don't know if it's the liver or your abdominal thing or whatever. But anyways, I'm only telling you this because this kept coming as a shock to me. It's like, wait, my uncle Kurt and my uncle Edgar, they didn't have this issue. They had the gallbladder out. They were fine after a while, and so So I'm in there, and also kabang kabang, I end up, they're supposed to go home the same day, but because it's not necrotic, I get this sack put on my side, and anyway, and I have to stay in the hospital 5 days, at which point I also find, for some reason, I am unable to urinate at all. I had been on what we call, you guys may call Flomax in the States, but it's Tamsulosin, I guess, just Dilucin, but it's just like it all hit the same time. And it was like, all of a sudden, there I am. That was August. By August, I have my necrotic gallbladder taken out, and I'm healing from that. And then all of a sudden, they're saying, you need catheters. I ended up in catheter for 5 months. Now, you can't work. You really can't work unless you're working from home some on a computer. You really can't work with a catheter in you. I have found, maybe I'm unique, but after 2.5 hours with those damn things in you, the pain was so excruciating. And here's the other thing. You take Tylenol 3s with codeine to get the pain down, you're going to have another pain. It's called constipation. Yes, folks, things we don't like to talk about. So all this kept hitting. And so I ended up, even I had TERP done, which I have other videos on TERP. If you want to search that out, that might be helpful to you fellas if you want to know about getting the prostate cleared out. And I kept hearing, well, you don't have cancer, you don't have cancer, you don't have cancer. And I'm like, oh, well, that's good. That's good. But I can't work. I can't make an income. I'm not ready to retire. I'm only, late 50s. So what happens is I have to wait, and then I have to travel to get the surgery done on January 2024. And then they find out, because I was due to have this test to see if I have, the colon test. You send in your sample, and they, get to play around with it and see if there's any blood in it or something. Well, of all the times, I'd had a colonoscopy before, but I was just getting over having peeing and bleeding. And I said, no, I'm going to take the test a little longer because I don't want any of this blood getting into the, the bathroom stuff. And sure enough, it comes back that June. You have to have a colonoscopy because there's blood in your stool. And I'm like, oh my God. So the summer of 24, I'm under again for colonoscopy, which was, again, not to get into details, it was fine. They removed 4 polyps and I was fine. But the thing is, you can't work when you're like the workplace requires you to be available. Like if you're working retail, for example, you just can't phone in every day and say, I've got surgery of the month and it's going to take me out for 6 months or whatever. They'll find somebody else to do your work. And if you're working on your own, self-employed, well, you have to drop you get behind in what you're doing, and you have to drop a client and they pick up somebody else because the world moves on. So here's the thing that I'm trying to get to, and this is not all. I had other issues too. I did have sciatica twice, a torn rotator cuff for 1 whole year. With a little bit of physio and some home physio as well, it took me an entire year to get this arm to go vertical. I forget which year that was, but it was extreme pain and I couldn't lift it up past the right angle. And twice I had sciatica so bad I couldn't get off the sofa. Yes, I did all the exercise and stuff, but it was extreme pain. So what I'm trying to say to you, if you're in your 50s, if you're like early 50 right now, you're wondering, hell, I'm gonna be just like my uncles or the other people I know, and I'm just gonna keep on working. This is my warning to you. Be ready. Just because other men in your family or women, they didn't have issues that stopped them from working, it could happen to you. So if you can plan on an early retirement, maybe not even retire, but have everything set up and ready to go, don't be fooled by the illusion that you're going to be like everyone else in your family unit. That's my advice to you for today. That's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like and comment below. And let me know if you've experienced the same thing. Have you heard of people getting into their 60s and they no longer can work, or they just no longer exist? Well, let me know. But it's a beautiful day here, and we're surviving. We're doing okay. And I'm enjoying the life that I have as much as possible. Okay, thank you. Please like and subscribe if I've said, and we'll chat with you later, guys. You have a good one. Bye. This blue jay is trying to say hello. Chickadee.